everyone, my name is Kristen Mitsushiga and welcome to my little flush setting demonstration. Flush setting, which you may have also heard called gypsy setting or burnishing in, is a great way to add stones to your work, and you don't have to add anything like a bezel or prongs, which can kind of add visual clutter to your piece. So I really love how minimal this style of setting is, and I use it a lot in my work, including in this example of my Hawaiian constellation series. So you can see no hardware here. There are a few things that you'll need in order to be successful with your flush setting. First of all, you need to know that this only works with round stones, unfortunately. So it has to be a round stone, and it has to be a really hard stone. The corundum family is really good, which includes diamonds and rubies and sapphires, but if you're not ready to make that kind of investment, CZs or cubic zirconia are fine as a substitute for practice. Your metal needs to be at least as thick as your stone is tall. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, but from the table to the culet. Don't worry if you don't know those words yet. We'll go over those in a second. You'll need a rotary tool. I prefer a flex shaft, but any kind of a rotary tool that has precision control to it. You'll need calipers, digital or analog are fine, something to measure your bits and your stones with. And you'll need some sticky wax or tweezers if that works for you. You'll see I use my fingernails as tweezers, but my sticky wax is literally just from a piece of cheese, so you can use that as well. You'll need a metal drill bit, meaning a drill bit that can drill metal, and the stone should be about 1 millimeter larger than your drill bit in diameter. So your drill bit's 1 millimeter smaller than the diameter of your stone. Make sure you center punch before you drill. And a ball burr. And again, we're going to talk about what the ball burr is. This is optional, but ball burrs are a lot cheaper than setting burrs, and so they can kind of be your sacrificial burr for hogging out the majority of the material. And then you'll make the seat shape with your setting burr. Again, we'll show you a picture of those. And then some kind of lubricant for your rotary tool. I like beeswax or burr life, of course, works well too. I also need to use visual aids, so make sure you have that. And of course, the point burnisher, and I'm going to show you how to make your own as well. So stay tuned at the end for a little bonus material on how to make your own point burnisher. The other terminology that may be new to you in that list are the burrs. There's a ball burr and a setting burr listed, and we'll talk a little bit more about those, but they're grinding tools. They have teeth on them, and they're used in the rotary tools. The other terminology that you probably might have noticed is when we're talking about the stone itself. So when you're using faceted stones, as you will see in this highly technical drawing of a brilliant cut diamond, there are several parts of the stone that you'll want to be thinking about. The top flat part is called the table. The widest part, which is also the part that it kind of sits on when you're setting it, is the girdle. The bottom pointy part is the culet. And then the pavilion is the name of the bottom facets between the girdle and the culet. The top facets are called the crown, or the crown facets between the table and the girdle. Once you know those, you'll be able to measure better. We're going to be measuring the girdle to find out what the diameter of your stone is. And we'll also be talking about the depth of the stone from table to culet. Your metal needs to be at least as thick as the height of your stone from table to culet. And remember that setting burr that we were talking about? Well, it's really important that you know what size setting burr to use. And the size that you'll want is going to be exactly the same diameter as your stone. And you measure your stone by the diameter, again, at the widest part, which is the girdle. And that should be equal to the widest part of the burr, so the outside part of all the teeth, or a little bit smaller. So I'm going to run through this whole process twice. Keep in mind, I've already done all the other fabrication on this piece. It's been bent, it's been textured, and I've already drilled holes where I want the stones to be by center punching and then drilling with a drill that's about 1 millimeter smaller than the stone. The first thing I'm going to do is take a ball burr, and starting rotating it before I touch it, I'm going to open up that drilled hole just at the top. I'm not going all the way through, just to hog out some of that metal so the stone will sit down into that hole. You see I'm going really slowly. I do not want to go too far, because otherwise the stone will end up too deep, or I could punch all the way through the stone. That's just a little brush to get the cut metal out of the way. There's my stone. I'm using, this one is 1.5 millimeters in diameter. There's my sticky wax. It's not red anymore just because it's filled with a bunch of dirt from my bench. That'll happen to yours too. And I'm just testing it to see how deep that hole that I made is. I'm going to just gently take it out, put it aside again, and go a little bit deeper. Again, it's really important that you just sneak up on this. You're not trying to be a speed wizard here. Eventually you'll get fast enough at it that you'll just know how far to go. But especially when you're starting out, it's better to make it too shallow and have to dig a little bit deeper. You see I'm using my fingernails again to kind of straighten the stone out. Checking the seat depth. And now I'm going to use the setting burr, changing out my bit. I'm going to use the setting burr now that most of the metal has been removed by the ball burr. I'm going to go back in and change the angle of the seat so the stone fits perfectly in there. So this is less about changing the depth, more about just changing the seat shape. That's why it went so quickly. That's all I had to do right there. Putting the stone back in, kind of rolling it off the wax, getting it level with my fingernail. And the depth that I'm looking for here, I know it's a little hard to see here, I'm actually picking it up closer to my eyeball, which you can't see on screen, but the depth I'm looking for is for the table, that flat part of the stone on top, to be level with the metal on either side. I also want it to be nice and even. I don't want it to be cocked to one side. Using the back end of my wax stick just to kind of press it in. I have my wax stuck on a piece of bone. This is my point burnisher. Literally just a pointy polished piece of steel. And once the stone is in place, I'm just going to start kind of going around and around the stone against the metal with my point burnisher. And this is the part that seems kind of like magic. It doesn't seem like it should work, but it does. And what's happening here, you'll see, I'm going to do a couple of diagrams when I run through it the second time. But basically, I'm displacing just a little tiny bit of that silver so that it's sitting over the edge of the stone. It's going onto those crown facets just a little bit over the girdle to hold it in place. And you'll know that it's really in there when you can poke it from the back. You want to really make sure that it's in there tightly. Here I'm checking it for the first time. It's still wiggling a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's all the way in there and just burnish it down a little bit further with my point burnisher. I'm pressing quite hard. You can hopefully see that little burnished edge. Now I'm poking it from the back quite hard also. If I can't poke it out this way, I know that the stone is really in there and the jewelry will be long lasting. So let's go through the whole process again, this time with a little bit of extra help with a diagram on your left on the chalkboard. Of course, again, we're starting with the same piece, so the holes are already center punched and drilled. It's a through hole. This lets light in through the back. Helps you clean it out afterwards. And the first thing that we do is open up that hole with a ball burr. Again, the reason we do it with a ball burr, there are two reasons actually. One is that you can't be at a wrong angle with a ball burr, so that's pretty great. And also, they're cheaper to replace. So when they wear out, we can replace them more cheaply and easily than a setting burr. Then we go in with a setting burr to change the shape of the seat so that it fits the same angle as the bottom of the stone. And we're checking the stone the whole time. Ideally, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for the stone to sit down in the hole to a depth where the table is the same height as the surrounding metal. The table is that flat part on the top of the stone. Again, so it's about equal with the surrounding metal. You can see that here, about equal. And you'll also notice that there's a little shelf of metal exposed then above the girdle. So you've cut down enough that there's a little bit of metal in there that's showing, that's upright. And that is really important because that's the piece of metal that you're going to burnish down over the stone using the point burnisher. Coming down straight down with the point burnisher, and the point burnisher is pointy, but it's not super sharp. You're going to go around and around the stone while pressing down. What that does is it burnishes over just a little bit of that side wall, just enough to let a tiny flange of that metal push down over the crown facets, and it holds that girdle right in place. The stone can no longer pop out. You can only see it here on the left, but of course if I'm going around and around, it's around the whole stone. And that's all it takes, just that little tiny piece of metal. The analogy I use for this technique is if you take the back of a spoon and you drag it through soft ice cream, it kind of makes a trough and displaces the ice cream on either side. That's what you're doing with the metal. You're just using a different tool. It's kind of like a spoon, and you're pressing quite a bit harder. Don't forget that last step of checking to make sure it's in there securely. And that's it. That's all there is to it. I can't wait to see what you make with this fun technique. Aloha! So now I'm going to show you how to make your own point burnisher. It's actually really simple. You just can use an old burr or a bit. It's great steel. And I'm going to use a cut-off disc on my flex shaft to cut off the end of it, the working end. Make sure you wear an eye protection and a dust mask for this. Those cut-off discs are pretty nasty, and this whole process kicks up quite a bit of dust. So once that tip is off, I'm going to use a Mizzy wheel. And Mizzy is just a brand name for a grinding wheel that you can use on your rotary tool. If you have a bench grinder, you can use that as well. I'm just doing everything here with my flex shaft. And what I'm doing here is getting that initial rough shaping done. So taking off those edges. My ideal shape eventually is going to be to make a point that's not too sharp. I'm not looking to shred the metal. I'm looking to burnish it. So just like with all metal smithing, I'm going to move to a finer abrasive. Now this is a rubber wheel, and the rubber has abrasive impregnated throughout. This is a Dedico brand, long-lasting polyurethane wheel. I really like these wheels. They're dental. And the blue color is the coarse, and they work great on steel. So what I'm doing here is not just refining the shape, but also I'm trying to get all those initial real coarse stone grinding marks out. So I'll take a little time to make sure that I have the shape right. And the last step that you'll see me do here in just a minute is I'm going to take a buffing wheel, in this case a hard felt buff that has some buffing compound on it, and really polish the heck out of that thing. I want it to be as mirror finish a polish as possible, because basically as I am rubbing and burnishing it against my metal, it's going to impart whatever finishes on it onto the piece. Then I'll put it into a tool holder or a pin vise, and I'm ready to set. Have fun!